Good Sunday morning. Welcome. I'm Glenna Milberg. Happy Easter to those who celebrate today. We start with South Florida, with what South Florida knows as March Madness spring break season. And this year, it made global news from Miami Beach to Fort Lauderdale. First to Miami Beach, where they decided to break up with what had become a crowded, uncontrollable, but worse, violent few weekends every year. And an unprecedented plan put in place seems to have worked. March comes to an end with no news of people dying on Ocean Drive, no mass stampedes, overrunning sidewalks, restaurants. The man tasked with seeing it through and keeping it safe is Miami Beach's police chief. And his first spring break as the city's top cop, but a veteran Miami Beach police officer with plenty of spring break experience. Chief Wayne Jones right here with us today. Chief Jones, great to have you. Your first time at the table.
First time at the table.
Welcome.
And thank you for allowing me to be here and spend some time with you.
28 years with Miami Beach Police Department before they handed you the extra star, I guess,
Yeah.
last year. So this is, you know, we don't often do victory laps on this show, but I think it's safe to say that this is kind of a victory lap for you at the end of March, and credit from a lot of people is going to you, and I know there's a lot of people involved in that. But what do you think went right this time?
Almost everything. Almost everything. And starting with the very, very clever campaign that went out. We're breaking up with spring break.
I want to talk about the messaging, yes.
It was perfect. Perfectly done, perfectly executed. Over 2 billion views of that video in the campaign. And so it worked, right? We told people ahead of time what was going to happen if it came to South Beach. And then the men and women of the police department did a fantastic job sort of putting that into action.
So, you know, it really interesting that you said right off the bat it was the messaging, because for the past few years, I mean, all the news organizations around the world have been on Ocean Drive for spring break. And there has, in the past couple of years, there's always been a very large police presence there, and multiple police forces adding to the assist.
Yeah.
So that visually did not look different. There were the parking garages that were closed or the fees hiked. There have been license plate readers on the causeways for a few years. Mm-hmm. There have been traffic patterns. So was the messaging really the difference this year, besides the parking garages?
Yeah, I think it was a game changer. It started off with really clever messaging, like I said, and then we added a new twist to all of that. Yes, we had all these police departments, 18 other police departments, law enforcement agencies supporting our efforts, which is fantastic. We had the DUI checkpoints and the LPRs, but we never did all that at the same time. Huh. It was sort of mixed match in the past, and this year what we did was brought it all together, and it worked.
And this was you've 28 years on the force, but this was your sort of, and you've been involved in spring break planning for a while, and this was your first time at the head. That was pressure. I mean, it was on you. Did you feel that pressure?
I did feel pressure. You know, I was asked, Glenna, what would success look like to me? And for me, it was very simple. No one shot and killed. Okay. And we accomplished that.
Wow, that's a good accomplishment. So let's talk numbers. Last year, I have, and tell me if these are accurate, because I pulled these today.
Sure.
500 arrests last year, more than 500 arrests, is that true?
More than 500, I think 507.
And this year, arrests down 8%.
Approximately, it's 469 this year as
All right,
compared to last year.
So still hundreds of arrests.
Sure.
Were the arrests for different crimes?
A host of different crimes, usually associated with spring break
I guess the question is, were the arrests this year different, less severe crimes, less charges, or the same? You know, you paint a picture of what did change in the arrest pattern.
Less arrests, pattern remains the same.
Explain that.
Well, kids come in here for spring break. Kids sometimes drink too much during spring break. They're having a good time, getting into fights. Sometimes things are stolen, open air drinking. That sort of spring break related.
Violent crime arrests down?
Down significantly.
Talk about that. That's what I want to hear, because I think people look at spring break, you're going to know kids are drinking and adults are drinking, and there will be fights. But I think what really drew attention and horror were people dying, gunshots, stampedes. Did you see, well, you didn't see that this year, but so those kind of arrests, which we would call violent crimes, do you see a market decrease in those?
Decrease, significant decrease, and again, I think it was owed to initial campaign that went out. Then it was owed also to our officers engaging more. We have a core of civilian employees. We call them goodwill ambassadors, professional employees.
Sure, they've been there.
Who give up their time to come out and support the police efforts. And their job typically is to mitigate conflict between people, mitigate conflict between our spring breakers and police, whereby police don't have to make arrests as we have in the past.
So front end is always the best. The defense, the offense is better than the defense.
Absolutely.
I guess I'm looking for.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about the sort of other side, the reaction.
Sure.
For every action, there's a reaction, and the biggest criticism we've heard is from businesses, and many were on board. Many of the businesses took the hit, took the sacrifice. And some didn't. Some didn't like their business mitigated by city decisions.
Yeah.
In some cases, 50% business loss over the month.
Yeah.
What have you heard about that?
I don't know what the data says in terms of business loss or gain, but I can tell you this. One of the things we've heard from businesses over the years, as well as residents over the years, was that spring break, the way it existed, was not sustainable.
Yeah.
They didn't want it. People were getting hurt, people were getting killed. And we pledge, I think you have a city manager had a pledge, you have a mayor and commission pledge to make a positive difference during spring break, had a police department had to act on that pledge, and I think it worked out well.
Right. I mean, it's safe to say you're the boss, but you take orders from other people. And I want to hear from you. Do you think what has gone on, not only this year, but in years past, is reflective? You know, we zero in on Ocean Drive and spring break at a certain time, but is that reflective of crime trends or trends of, social trends in not only Miami Beach, which you can speak of, but Miami Beach is kind of like on the tip of the spear of other coastal tourist cities. Everybody watches to see what works and what doesn't work. Yeah. Do you think it's kind of reflective about what goes on maybe year round?
Well, I think it's reflective of society in general, right? I think one of the things I'm most proud of with the city, Miami Beach, with the police department, is that our crime has been down significantly. This year when compared to last year's same time, 2023 when compared to 2022, crime has been down.
Why?
I think it's owed to really proactive policing in the city.
I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah, it is.
But specifically, what kind of proactive policing? Like what brings crime down like that?
Identifying areas of concern. For example, and when I first got sworn in, one of the things I wanted to do was reduce the amount of drug dealing on Ocean Drive. And so we narrowly targeted dealing with drug deals on Ocean Drive, put a lot of people in jail, and today I can tell you, I'm proud to say, that complaints related to drug dealing on Ocean Drive, Entertainment District, down significantly.
And does that, aside from your proactive measures, there is messaging, to your point, that goes with that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think messaging is hugely important. Tell people what to expect, what's going to happen if you break our laws, and then follow through with that.
You know, you are sort of an historic police chief hire at a time of real change. You were hired, and then poof, 2 months later, you've got some new bosses, a new commission, a new administration. I'd like to talk about that a little bit when we come right back. Stay tuned. We are back at the table. Miami Beach Police Chief Wayne Jones talking about spring break, taking his victory lap of sorts, and talking about a lot of other things. We were talking during the commercial break. I just want to kind of clarify one thing. We were talking about the arrests made during March, which we call spring break season, 400 and something.
407.
407.
I'm sorry, 469.
469, or the rest go up as we speak.
No. Just top of my head.
Okay, so 469 arrests in March, but not on Ocean Drive.
Not on Ocean
citywide.
Drive. That's correct. That's
Put that in
citywide.
context for me.
Yeah, it's citywide arrests, and we've always sort of captured numbers that way. We just do the entire city for the entire month of March. As compared to last year, obviously we're still down. As compared to the year before, that down significantly.
So does that mean if there were no such thing as spring break, some of those arrests would still be happening?
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's wrong for us to characterize as 478 arrests during spring break. That's
It's all
out of
citywide.
context.
It's all citywide.
I am glad we cleared that up. I like to be very factual. Okay, so let's bring this big picture a little bit. So you are the city's first black police chief. That is an historic hire at a time when you have a new administration very focused on the law and order aspect of their administration. How are you going to take them through that?
Well, listen, quite simply, the Mayor and Commission dubbed himself a Law and Order Mayor and Commission. We are a law and order city. We're a law and order police department. And so the idea that we enforce our laws that exist and police bad behavior doesn't change. It doesn't change whether or not it's a new commission, old commission. For us, it's all the same.
So I will not be bringing up anything new and surprising by telling you that while that has been the headline, we police behavior, not people, that has been the headline for a few years.
Sure.
There are a significant number of people who think and feel otherwise.
Yeah.
And how do you deal with that?
Well, listen, Glenna, I'm a black man. I've got lived experience of being a black man. So race and policing, I am hypersensitive to it. And what we do with our police officers, the entire police department, is this concept that we don't police race or ethnicity, we police behavior. Good behavior is always welcome, bad behavior is addressed.
And have you played that out in the streets differently in the last, you've been 9 months, 6 to 9 months,
Yeah.
than your department? Because you have the experience of the department,
Sure,
you've been there.
sure.
Has that played out differently over the last couple of months since you've been at the helm?
No, it's played out the way it should always play out, right? Police officers police behavior and not race or ethnicity.
And you have not gotten any feedback, criticism? Have you had to address
Positive
anything?
feedback, by and large, of how we're policing the community. We police from a position of patience and tolerance, irrespective of color.
There have been, and I don't, now is not the time to get into them, but
Sure.
there have been specific incidents that we have actually reported on
Sure.
where that has apparently not been the case. And several of the officers have really been taken to court over that. And that's why I asked to see whether that is something that you specifically are focusing on or concerned about.
Well, when I took over, I made it very clear to my police officers, like I said before, that bad behavior will be addressed, as we should always address bad behavior, but policing because of race, of ethnicity will not be tolerated. And I'm very proud of my police department. I fully believe, I strongly believe that they police behavior and nothing else.
Let's talk about some new laws that you have to contend with, and I think the one that is getting so much attention right now is that it's a new state law that bans camping, targeting on people living on the streets. People living on the streets are not a monolithic group. Some may be experiencing financial hardship or homelessness, and some are real mental health issues that need to be addressed. And I know you are very much involved and have been involved in that. Miami Beach had that ordinance first.
Yes.
How has that played out in the streets? How is your department handling? How many arrests have you been made under that ordinance, and what happens?
Well, it's an interesting ordinance. It really gave us another tool to add to our toolbox of laws when it comes to policing people and addressing issues on the street. We have used the ordinance a handful of times, I think just over 20 times since it was implemented. It was implemented in October. We went through a training session with our police officers to make sure they understand fully what the ordinance meant and how to apply it. And so I believe that the ordinance in and of itself is not what we should always focus on, because there's other things we can do in terms of making arrests if necessary.
And have you trained your police department to use that tool as a last resort instead of a first resort?
They're trained to use the tool if it becomes necessary and based on their discretion.
And has that been a hardship since the state now has implemented that same law as far as pressure to use it, since the governor came and signed that bill in Miami Beach?
Yeah, not at all. I think we can continue to interact with the homeless community much like we've always interacted with them. If the law is appropriate to be used at any given time, it will be used. If not, if another law is appropriate to be used, that law would be used. Or if the officer wants to exercise his or her discretion, he or she will exercise his or her discretion.
Have you, when playing this out, the state law actually has the possibility of government creating this encampment, possibly in the city, with rules, with security, for a population that either can't or won't go to a shelter. Is there any talk in the city of doing that?
There's no talk right now in the city of doing that. I don't know if it'll get to that point, quite frankly. I think we do a fantastic job providing services to homeless residents of the city. The city has a standalone department that deals strictly with providing services to homeless residents.
And has had that.
And has it for many, many years. The police department for many years, and we're the first to do this. Miami Beach Police Department was the first to do this. We have a squad of officers especially trained to provide services to the homeless population.
So in the minute or so that we have left, let's bring it back to spring break, since
Sure.
that's where we started. Lessons learned, plans for next year. I know you're planning for next year.
Oh, yes, we are. We're planning for
So
next year.
what are the lessons learned?
Listen,
What are the
I
changes?
think we're going to do much of the same we've done this year for next year. Obviously, it worked for us. Our arrest numbers are down significantly. No one was really seriously injured during spring break, and we made it through. Made it through with flying colors. And so I think we'll do much of the same that we did this year, next year as well.
Chief Wayne Jones, it is great to have you. Congratulations on
Thank you.
a job that everyone says is well done.
Thank you.
And we appreciate your here on Easter. Happy Easter to you
Happy
and your
Easter to you
family.
too. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.